going in a different direction. Matt?
BDP. All right, so we're doing Boogie Down Productions' Criminal Minded. In the opening montage, you heard a clip from Remix for P is Free, and now you're going to hear a clip from 9mm Goes Bang.
This is KRS-One. Been to a crack dealer by the name of Peter. Had to buck him down with my 9mm. He said I had his girl. I said, now what to you, stupid? But he tried to play me out, and KRS-One knew it. He reached for his pistol, but it was just a waste, cause my 9mm was up against his face. He pulled his pistol anyway, and I filled him full of lead. But just before he fell to the ground, this is what I said. Why da da dang, why da 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 dang. Hey, listen to my 9mm go bang. Why da da dang, why da 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 dang. Hey.
All right, so this is the first time we're covering Boogie Down Productions. This is Criminal Minded. It comes in at number 518 in the 1980s on Best Ever Albums, number 50 in 1987. I think this was a little bit misplaced in our catalog because we still should be in 86, but whatever. Yeah. So we're a little out of sort, but that's okay. So 50 in 1987, 3,367 of all time. It is Boogie Down Productions' highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. It also came in on Rolling Stone's list at 239, and BDP is ranked number 1,768 of overall artist rankings in Best Ever Albums. So this is their debut album. It was released on March 3rd, 1987, and I didn't know this, but I guess it's considered one of the first gangsta rap albums, the gangsta rap genre.
For sure. This is, yeah.
Look
at the cover. Look at the cover.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Well, part of the cover is it's the first time that a major release happened. Rap release came out with many weapons on the cover. Yeah.
Think about what we've covered so far. You know what I mean? And compare and contrast the rap albums we've covered.
Yeah.
It definitely seems like an evolution of the genre.
Yeah. So can you guys? So within gangster rap, there were two other artists that I saw that were ranked kind of as earlier, forerunners of gangster rap before BDP. Can you? One of them I'd never heard of, so I'll give you that. Can you name
Big Daddy Kane?
No, that name did not come up. For gangster rap.
Are we saying NWA? Are we?
No, I don't think they're around yet. I don't think they're around yet. But before them. So right around the time that this album came out, maybe a little bit before, was Ice-T.
Oh, okay.
Was considered one of the first guys. And then somebody I never heard of who's considered the granddaddy of all gangster rap, Schoolie D.
Schoolie D, yep, exactly, yep. So I would have, you give me more time, I would have got that.
Okay.
It's New York legend.
So this is a subgenre of rap, which is known for its portrayal of life on the streets, the gritty nature of what they are experiencing there. So the group was started by Lawrence Krishna Parker, also known as KRS-One, Scott Sterling, who's known as DJ Scott LaRock, and Derek Jones, who's also known as D-Nice. I also got a kick out of this. If anybody didn't know any of the names of the members of BDP, just listen to the first few bars of any song, and they will tell you multiple times who you are listening to.
But that was a hallmark of early New York hip hop. Yeah,
right.
I mean, you were gonna call out your name 1,000 times.
I had never heard of Scott LaRock, and I'm like, man, this guy must be, he's all over the place on this record. So Wikipedia lists a total of 25 members and collaborators of BDP throughout its existence, but KRS-One has been the main constants behind this project, and it was released by B-Boy Records, which the group feuded with over, I guess, delayed royalties that they were supposed to be getting that they weren't getting. So the lawsuit happened, and basically it was settled out of court. And the group later signed with Warner Brothers after being introduced to them by Ice-T. So Ice-T kind of brought the two together on that. So some themes of this record include one of the first rap beefs that you're going to hear about and it had to do with the origin of hip hop. Because
Bridge is over, Matt. That's what it's about. That's the whole song's about that.
Yeah. So this was a couple of songs on here. The Bridge is Over, and it was basically a retort to a group called the Juice Crew, who in one of their songs, what that was called The Bridge, there was some people thought that they were basically saying that rap started in Queens and BDP's from the Bronx. So some of the songs, there are diss tracks on here calling out the Juice Crew for misinterpreting or misinforming everybody of where hip hop really started. So BDP is definitely suggesting that that is in the Bronx. So that was one of the first hip hop wars that we're hearing on this record. There's also a Jamaican, we're going back into the Jamaican influence. There's a Jamaican influence on this record. Heard in a couple of songs, including remix for P is Free, which includes a sample from Yellow Man's Zung Zung. And later on this, and I recognize that song. I was like, that sound. I remember that from Black Star, which was Mos Def and Talib Kweli. Yep. And so they had covered that. That's also what you're seeing a lot on here. Is you can look up all the different ways that this album, parts of this album, were covered in future songs or songs that they used to put into this record. So there's certainly a lot of sampling going on there. But BDP is known as helping to place a solidifying role for reggae in hip hop culture. So some sad news related to this record. One of the reasons I probably never heard of Scott LaRock was because he died about 5 months after the record was released. This all happened. So D Nice apparently was assaulted by a group of, I don't know, punks, hoodlums, thugs, whatever. So he was getting harassed by some people, and he went to Scott LaRock to help kind of like quash the beef or to help him deal with it. And apparently LaRock goes to the house of one of these guys, and he's trying to like make the peace, and one of the guys just starts shooting, opens fire, and hits LaRock in the back of the neck, and he died about an hour later at a local hospital. And also sadly, even more sadly, leaving behind an infant son. And after his death, Warner Brothers then backed out of the contract with BDP, so they lost their contract at that point. KRS-One kept the group going. He added, at that point, his wife and his brother to join, and they did end up signing with Jive, RCA Records. And over the years, KRS-One recorded a total of 8 albums with them, 4 of which is named under BDP, the other 4 as a solo artist. And so he did have a successful career after that. The album itself became hard to find because it fell in and out of pressings from different labels would pick it up and press it and then stop, and so it went back and forth like that until 2002 when a Boston-based record label called Landspeed Records bought the rights to all of the B-Boyd recordings, and then they that resulted in a re-release of Criminal Minded, which from that point on it's been much easier to find. So after Scott LaRock's death, their music became much more politically conscious, and with the next album, By Any Means Necessary, KRS-One started defining himself as the teacher, and symbolizing his emphasis on educating his audience members and fans about relevant social issues surrounding the African American experience. So that's one of the reasons that I was kind of surprised, because I am somewhat familiar with KRS-One and BDP, and some of the song like You Must Learn. It's all about educating yourself, learning history, learning about a variety of things so that you can be better suited to function in this world. So I was kind of like surprised. I'm like, man, he's gangster rap. I didn't associate the violent and the gangster rap, label for someone like him. But that it kind of makes sense that it was after LaRock's death that he kind of went in a little bit of a different direction and started going more towards that socially conscious type of message. And KRS-One was also the founder of a movement called Stop the Violence. And that was in response to not only LaRock's member as well as a murder of a fan. Apparently there was another murder of a fan at a BDP and Public Enemy concert. There was a shooting happening there. And so he got a number of other East Coast rappers to come together. They released a single called Self-Destruction, and they had all the proceeds of that go to the National Urban League. So fairly seminal, influential gangster rap hip-hop group here. And I am curious to hear your thoughts. So I think, John, you are up. So what's your take here, John?
Yeah, this is like one of the first rap albums I can remember listening to as a kid. I mean, this was like the type of stuff that older brothers of people I knew played, right? And when I think early, I think Big Daddy Kane, I think Boogie Down Productions, I think Eric B and Rakim, and I think old early LL Cool J, right? That's, growing up in the shadow of New York, right? It was New York, right? That was hip hop.
Right.
and it expands, right? But like there was a real and it's kind of one of those things that's gotten muddled now, but where I grew up, right, like there was a real pride that like there was a belief hip hop came from New York. Like other people did hip hop, right? And maybe people now think of the West Coast and Atlanta and Houston and these places, right, as hip hop, but like there still is a not insignificant amount of people that are like, well, yeah, hip hop is a New York thing that New York gave the rest of the world, right? And like this is that New York sound, right? But we talked about an evolution with Bad Brains, right? Like this is the evolution of early New York hip hop. So, you know, you've got, you know, Grandmaster Flash Furious 5, you've got Curtis Blow, you've got all the people like that, right? And then it kind of goes over, like you said, to Schoolie D and Shabba Ranks and Africa Bambaataa, right? And all those folks. And then here is where you get like that grittier, the flow is changing, right?
Yep.
The thing that stands out to me here is this is still the DJ era of hip hop too, right? The MC hasn't totally taken over yet. That doesn't come till a little bit later. So it's funny, Matt, when you say they got dropped from their record label, because I would bet some of that's the violence, right? But I would also bet that it's like, well, when you lose your DJ, right? Like, what's your identity, right? That was still a thing, right? That your DJ was concurrent with the MC. And so, and yeah, this is that era where it's still very direct rhymes, like last word rhyme schemes. It's a lot of calling out and response. It's still got that early hip hop thing where you're identifying yourself and sort of, it's like a braggart culture a little bit, still designed primarily to get you to move. But now you're also bringing in like a consciousness to it, which, you know, we saw in things like The Message, right, by Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5, or like White Lines, right, by Curtis Blow, and it's always been there, right? But here's where the message isn't just that aspirational message, it's also like, for lack of a better way of putting it, like from the street, right? You know what I mean? Like there's a song here about talking to and possibly even soliciting, you know, hookers on this album. There's plenty of songs about committing violent crime. You know, there's also some uplift songs, you know, but the ugly side of the streets is, I wouldn't say it's being celebrated here, but it's not being firmly and morally chastised either. It's being presented matter-of-factly as something that's going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So lyrically, to me, that's a step forward. And Matt, I think that is why the early gangster rap is on this, because it's the themes, right? Thematically, the stories being told are street dreams type stories, for a lack of a better way of putting it. You know, that concept of street dreams, right? Like coming up, but you're coming up, you know, you're celebrating where you're from, but you're not always celebrating all the good parts of it too. You're just sort of telling slice of life type tales. I would say I enjoy the beats on this album quite a bit. I mean, The Bridge Is Over is a iconic beat for me because it takes that other song, The Bridge, and it inverts the rhyme, you know, the beat of it a little bit. Like, so the whole song is sort of like a direct addressing of that song. Obviously South Bronx, the combination of, you know, the James Brown, you know, in there, you know, I would call, you know, I've called stuff drum and bass before. This is just drum, right? Like this is like a drum heavy beat, right? With, you know, there's obviously bass because it's rap, right? But like the drum is so pronounced on this that, like, you know, that sound of the drum, like tinny kind of drum sound, I'd say, almost like hitting the hi-hat cymbal, but a harder hit of it as opposed to like a jazz version of it. But yeah, South Bronx and The Bridge Is Over are like bona fide early hip hop classics. I mean, those were songs I would hear all the time when I was growing up. Like you'd walk into stores, right, and you'd hear it. Friends of yours, like older brothers, would be playing those songs and they'd be there. And it's funny because, you know, KRS-One, from a lyrical standpoint, was always, was his name, was he the teacher, Matt? Was that his nickname, if I remember correctly?
Yes,
what
the
he went
teacher.
by?
Yep.
Yeah, the teacher.
But at this time, he was like the Oh, he was something else. He had an initial nickname. Hang on a second, I'll look it
Well,
up.
like I think the teacher thing, like my origin story is I always knew it was like he wasn't that, like he was a guy that like he went to like libraries, right, and like lived on the street for a while and was sort of like a street intellect, right? But then he sort of veered after Scott LaRock got killed, right, into sort of trying to be a more positive presence. And, you know, in bringing in sort of the criminal minded elements of it, right? Like he had a more definitive moral stance on it, right? As opposed to like moral ambiguity, which I would describe this album as in terms of what was going. I mean, when you name an album Criminal Minded, right? You know, you kind of have a point of view. So
he was initially the blast master, and then he
right, which is
teacher.
more of like an MC, right? You know what I mean? Like blast, and a guy that like, you know, I'm gonna do disses, you know, and the diss track, right, is a staple part of New York rap, right? Mm-hmm. Some of the most famous early New York songs, whether it be The Bridge Is Over Here or you know, like even Mama Said Knock You Out, right, is like a diss song. It's literally a diss track. So that's another piece that's being explored here. So prototypical New York stuff, but I won't take up more time than that. I really like this album. I think this is almost like an essential album, even more so than maybe like the Run DMC and Grandmaster Flash albums we heard. Like I think this album almost needs to be heard more to kind of understand where hip hop went in the 90s in particular, because you could draw a straight line here to 90s hip hop that I don't know if you really can with Run DMC as comfortably, right? Like I think that the line from like Run DMC and Grandmaster Flash and stuff is drawn to here, right? And here on the evolutionary food chain moves it up quite a bit.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I agree. I think that this sounds more modern, or it's a step more in the modern direction than those other rap albums that we've heard, even differently than Beastie Boys, I would say, in a way. This is I would agree. I think this is also an essential album. It was a pleasure to listen to. I had not heard it in a long time. The gangsta rap themes are definitely here. I think that's important. I like the there's just so many hallmarks on this album. The dope beat, I really like that song, and I think it's one of the first times we've heard like an explicit sample with the AC/DC sample on it. I guess the Beastie Boys kind of took straight up samples, but it's so recognizable, the AC/DC guitar riff on it. Same thing with the James Brown sample you mentioned in South Bronx, but also on The Bridge Is Over, is there like a Billy Joel reference or sound from a song on it?
Yeah, it's still rock and roll to me.
Okay, that's what I
thought.
thought.
Yeah, and then they do it with like "Hey Jude."
He sings it like it.
Yeah, they sing it, but they put their own lyrics into it. But it's yeah.
Okay, so
he's not. They didn't sample it. It's just he just sings the melody.
Yeah, exactly. Kinda. So the humor element is here too. The cleverness. I really like Scott LaRock and kind of the DJing that's still around at this time, and hearing the record samples and kind of the way they play with the music. That that kind of fades away as we go on and becomes less prominent. But I still enjoy it. I'm a little nostalgic for it at this point, because I feel like it's a lost kind of skill set that's not in rap anymore, even though. So I think it's kind of one foot in the past, one foot in the future in terms of that. John mentioned kind of rap starting out being dance and party music, and I think that DJing is part of that. But I really like that. Scott LaRock, like you said, Matt, it said like 40 times, but it gets in your head and you kind of like, I don't know. I absorbed it, I guess, at some point. Also, I really like the funk and reggae that they kind of infuse into the rap. I think that is valuable and kind of shows the evolution as well. 9mm Goes Bang. That's such a great song. It wouldn't be the same song without the kind of reggae inflection in it or beat. Really, every song on here is pretty great. Word from Our Sponsor, I really like the scratching on that. Elementary is is great. Dope beat. I really love how they shout out all the people at the end. I think that's kind of a hallmark of rap too, that evolves. And I also caught the Black Star. I didn't realize they just kind of like blatantly took the whole thing from this song for remix for P is Free. And Super Ho, which is a classic, hilarious track that calls to mind later skits that involve sex in a lot of rap songs, and female backing singers singing the chorus, and just Scott LaRock having sex with a lot of people. It's hilarious. So big thumbs up for me. I think some people might find KRS-One's rapping a little slow, but it works for this album, and I think that's just kind of part of the evolution of it, and I didn't mind it, especially on subsequent listens. So yeah, thumbs up for me on this one.
Yeah, I didn't really know anything on this, and I think it does really straddle that line between like the early hip hop, kind of a little bit more rudimentary, and it's going to be weird for me talking about this stuff like I'm some sort of expert on hip hop, because it's not something I listen to a whole lot, but there is like an early a sense to this, like, kind of like a more basic kind of raps where there's not a lot of like stuff happening in the background. It's just kind of like a beat, and it's a bit more stripped down, and it is a slower rap compared to what would happen later on. But it's kind of like there's a very skeletal nature of this album as kind of an early hip hop record, and then it would branch out. But then you're right, it definitely delves into more interesting things happening, whether it's something that's sampling or just certain beats, and that's why I picked Remix for P is Free is a great. There's a heft to that song. There's more happening within that, sonically, that is much more appealing than something like Poetry, for example, which is I still liked it, but it's more complex and it's more interesting to me. And so when they throw out something like, I like that, whatever the sound effect that they're using in 9mm Goes Bang, is really cool. It's like a cool echoey kind of, I don't know what the hell it is. It's some sort of keyboard or synth sound, but it just it adds to it, right? And I don't think that the rapping is changing all that much, or really his flow, or his style throughout the record. But when you throw in something like that, or even if you throw something like the AC/DC guitar, is that on Dope Beat? That it just adds this layer to it. And I've always liked that more when hip hop is doing that, right? Rather than just the basic kind of stuff that might happen in early records. So they are branching out and kind of going a little bit more in that direction. So I did like that. I like KRS-One's voice. There are a lot of funny elements here, funny parts here. I like the diss track. I found it funny. I remember, John, you talking about earlier when I think we were doing the Grandmaster Flash album, and it's such a New York thing, and it's a hip hop is a very New York thing. I was like, okay, yeah, it started in New York, but apparently don't screw it up. It's got to be the Bronx. It's not Queens. We're gonna beef over that. That was kind of.
I'm telling
funny.
And don't even there's people that will still not accept that other places like hip hop is universal, right? It's like no,
right.
It's a New York thing that other people we shared with you, but it's our thing.
Yeah,
so,
but it's totally, and far be it for me to know the history of it and where it all started, but just like that, it's not just a New York thing. It's a very specific part of New York. Queens and the Bronx are very different. Which I don't know what that says about the later beef between East Coast and West Coast, which is much more broad. But did the Bronx and the Queens guys get together and join forces for that? Were they friends about later on? I don't know, but so I did like this. It was a fairly easy listen, but like I said, I liked the tracks that had a little bit more heft to them that was going on. I like the Bridge Is Over. Just throw me something in there. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, but just if it's a nice little groove, a piano part. I know they didn't have any on here, but sometimes I like it when they throw in a violin part. That's just a cool, it's just a unique sound that just adds to the beat that's happening. To me, it is more enjoyable. So I enjoyed this. I'm thumbs up on it.
Yeah, you may not be an expert on rap map, and I'm not saying I am either, but you'll definitely, and and you already are picking up on kind of how it's evolving and getting more complex and changing.
You
and
will be by the end of this podcast, Matt, because we're going to be covering a lot of hip hop.
Well, and I had and I do have. It's not like I'm a total,
neophyte
idiot, right, or a neophyte, but like I had a Dre album, I had Snoop, I had Wu-Tang, Beastie Boys. So there's been a number of hip hop, Outkast. So it's not like I'm totally like, I had Vanilla Ice too and MC Hammer, right? So like I'm somewhat literate, but it's just.
I also think it's better that we're authentic, because I'm not going to sit and claim I'm some expert either. Right. I mean, some of it I know better, and but I think we're coming at it, from a point where there's stuff we're learning, but there's also like our experience we have having listened to it in various elements. So, I think that's going to be cool. And I don't know if there's any music that evolved as rapidly, right, and as many different times in the first 20 years as rap. I mean, to the point where you don't even call it rap after a while, right? Like, it's hip hop now. So it's, and where's the line of demarcation when that happens, right? Is it when the DJ goes away? Is that when it goes away from hip hop?
I've never been sure. I've kind of just used the terms interchangeably, but I will say too, like
hip hop, I say away from, but into
right. I will say, for some reason, and I don't know what this says about me. Maybe I'm more of a prude, but like a song like Super Ho, like I've always kind of been like, I kind of roll my eyes at songs, whether it's rap or rock or anything, that's just like overtly sexual, like talking like this braggadocious thing about like I'm just nailing all kinds of chicks, and here I'm going to be really descriptive about it. And to me, it's always been like, I don't know, I don't know what. It's not like it makes. I guess it does make me uncomfortable on some level. Just like it's just like, God, what? Like that's graphic, But like I don't know why they feel the need to do that. It just makes me kind of. I'm like, are you really nailing that many chicks? Like I don't know. Like people that brag that much, it's just kind of, I don't know, a little eye rolling for me. But
I, on the other hand, celebrate songs like that because they make me laugh pretty. Because I think most of them are done tongue in cheek, and God knows if we ever covered Too Short, Matt, you might roll over in your grave.
Oh, some of them I know are just like filthy, like
if
I
we
know
did
there's
more
like
Freaky Tales. I don't know if you could make it through that song. So,
yeah.
Did you have that reaction to like "Ain't No Fun" by Snoop Dogg back in the day, Matt, or did you let that one slide? Yeah, that's kind of like that too. Not as much. I don't know. It's not. I can't say that's all the time, but there's sometimes it just hits me in a way. And I guess maybe for here, I was a little surprised because I was like, oh damn, KRS-One. Like I wasn't.
Even this.
Well, he's talking about Scott LaRock. In fairness, not himself.
No, I know, but still, like, right? He's not talking about himself.
Hilarious.
Yeah, that's true.
He's being the hype man for Scott LaRock's prodigious. It would be like if I told a bunch of explicit sex stories about Josh.
That's one of the reasons I really thought it was hilarious.
That's true. Yeah. That's funny.
And also, I find this song even that evolves too. I find this kind of pretty tasteful compared to some of the.
Oh no, it is. No, you're right. It just. I think part of it for me was just like because like being like not seeing this coming from KRS-One, like thinking of KRS-One kind of over here, and then like. Then he's doing gangster rap, and now he's talking about boning lots of chicks. Like I was a little surprised by that. So
there's some transgressive stuff though too, because if you see a song called "Super Ho," you think it's going to be about a woman, and especially in that era, right? The fact that he turns it on a man.
Scott LaRock is a super hoe.
It's funny.
Yeah, which is funny. Yeah. It's clever. I mean, it's definitely they thought through that. It's not.
Yeah,
I think that's another thing about this album is that it's thought through and considered and just I don't know, good fun listen.
Yep, definite thumbs up for me for sure.